So what is Icy Veins? Icy Veins is basically a haste modifier that grants you 20% haste for 30 seconds and also prevents damage from delaying your spell casts. Additionally, activating Icy Veins summons a water elemental to your side for the duration, and the water elemental's abilities grant you Frigid Empowerment, which is a buff that increases your frost damage up to 15%. So there's a pretty nice talent on the frost side of the tree here that synergizes very well with Icy Veins, called Winter's Blessing. Your haste is increased by 8%, so a flat 8% haste increase is obviously insane. Then you gain 10% more of the haste staff from all sources. So when you gain Icy Veins, you're actually gaining more than 20% haste. You'll see whenever my haste is it's at 51, and then when I pop Veins, I get 82%. Now, one of the major reasons why this amount of haste is actually really good on a Frost Mage is, one, because it will decrease your casting speed, which, as many of you guys know, that is the primary reason for having more haste. But there's another reason that having more haste also owns. So every single ability that you press is going to go on the global cooldown whenever you use a spell. And your haste actually modifies how quickly that global cooldown recovers. So without Veins, you can see it just visually. You can see it is about a second. And then when you have Icy Veins up, you can see that ends a lot quicker, allowing you to chain a lot of different spells back to back in a shorter amount of time than you could get without the Icy Veins. Oh dear. Like, for example, this DK. With Icy Veins up, I'm able to get... The speed of my global cooldown is so short that I'm able to combine all of my spells together to create a large amount of burst damage, where if I didn't have Icy Veins out, I would not be able to dish out the damage that I'm dealing. Alright, thankfully the raid seems to have gone away. But yeah, anyways, so Icy Veins increases the speed at which you can get your spells out by decreasing your global cooldown, which allows you to chain together multiple spells, which will increase the speed of the burst that you're able to do. And additionally, Veins, like we said at the start, has Frigid Empowerment with it as well. That will just be a stacking buff whenever your welly does damage. You pretty much don't have to think about this. Like, you can have Water Jet on an automatic setting here, but one thing that's important is that Water Jet activates Brain Freeze, which is basically a free flurry. So when you Veins, you want to make sure you're not capped on flurry charges as well, because your welly will come out, he'll auto use Water Jet, which will grant you another charge. Okay, so now I want to get into the rotation of how we're going to use Icy Veins to increase our global speed, increase our casting speed, so that we can dish out the most amount of burst and sustained damage as possible. I do want to reiterate that we do play PvP. This is a PvP guide. I think it goes without saying that you're not going to be able to stand in one place and do the complete rotation. I just want to kind of preface that. I know that in PvP there are interrupts, there's going to be stuns, going to be positioning, and people trading defensive cooldowns. So who you're going to be doing this damage on, in the order that you're going to do it, or like you might have to leave out certain sequences of damage in order to compensate for positioning or interrupts. So I just want to kind of preface that before we get into the rotation. But anyways, now let's just see how to do some damage. Alright, so that was the Glacial Spike rotation. Let me go over now, global for global, why we're doing certain things the way we are, so that you guys can build up an understanding and knowledge of why we're using certain tools in the order that we're using them. Just copying this rotation global for global is not going to have the same effect as understanding why we're using the tools that we're using when we do. That will allow you to make the necessary adjustments in game based off of interrupts and whatnot that are available. As you can see, I'm starting off with a Ring of Fire. So the way I think of Ring of Fire on a Frost Mage is you have a couple different kind of dots. So we have Blizzard, which is a dot. We have Frozen Orb, which is a dot. And we have Ring of Fire, which is a dot. It's always good to fish for Ring of Fires on any spec at the start of your damage rotation, because it's essentially just an added dot that will be ticking as you're bursting. So it'll add a little bit of damage to your burst. Then you can see we're starting a Frost Bomb. And if the Frost Bomb lands, then you can go for the Icy Veins. So the reason we're not Veinsing first is because we want to try to get a Frost Bomb on the target before we pop our Veins. I think a mistake I see a lot of people doing is they'll walk in to the arena and they'll just pop Veins first global when all the interrupts are present. What getting these two cast off beforehand actually does is either gets a couple interrupts out of the way so that when you do Veins, you can do more stuff without having to deal so much with interrupts and whatnot available. So yeah, now I'm getting the Frost Bomb on the target, which preps up our damage. You can see then immediately after that, I'm going into a Flurry. And the reason why we're going to Flurry first is because now we're going to press Icy Veins. And like I said, your Welly is going to use Water Jet at this point, and that's going to generate you a Brain Freeze. So now you can see we get the added Brain Freeze. So I go ahead and I apply a further dot because we basically have a couple globals until our Frost Bomb ticks into our Flurry charge. So for those of you guys who don't know, Frost Mage has a shattering bonus on your spells that whenever you do damage into a frozen target, so Flurry, if you guys don't know, leaves a Winter's Chill debuff, taking damage from the mage's spells as if it were frozen. And this will increase your critical strike chance against frozen targets by 1.5, and then also add an additional 50% critical strike chance, which I believe adds up to about 70%-ish crit. So it's very important to try and shatter your spells. There's a nice little tech here with Flurry, so I'll show you guys real quick. So I'll Frost Bomb and then I'll Flurry the target, and you'll notice how whenever that Frost Bomb expires, boom, crits, but it actually doesn't take one of the Winter's Chill stacks. So we're going to be abusing that a lot with this rotation, and that's why you're applying the Flurry directly after, because guess what, it's also going to count for your Frozen Orb, and it's also going to count for your Comet Storm, that are all going to benefit from Shatter but also not consume the effects. So just to show you guys right here briefly before we tab back over to the rotation, Frost Bomb, Flurry, Orb, Comet. So those are all getting the benefit from Shatter because of that Winter's Chill on the target. But you saw that it didn't absorb the 2 stacks that it has. Only direct spells actually proc that, like Ice Lance, for example. So yeah, that's why we applied this. So now we have our Ring of Fire ticking, our Frost Bomb is ticking. We just press Icy Veins, we Orb now, and then we'll go ahead and get a Comet Storm going as well because we have our Shatter debuff up. And then from here, we'll go ahead and use Ray of Frost, and we'll also use our Pet Nova here to further shatter the Comet ticks and the Frost Bomb ticks. And the reason why you guys might be confused now, you might be thinking, aren't we already shattering them because of the Winter's Chill? And you guys would be right about that, but there's a further modifier called Sub-Zero, where your Frost spells are going to deal 10% more to targets that are rooted and frozen. So when you use the Pet Nova, that's going to count as the rooted part, and then the Winter's Chill will count as the frozen part. Now you could just use the Pet Nova, like that also counts as the rooted and frozen, but you get the point. So now all the Comet ticks are going to do 20% more. The Frost Bomb is going to do 20% more. Actually, the Nova broke. You saw that just before the Frost Bomb expired. And then we go ahead and we Ray of Frost into the Winter's Chill debuff as well. So this is going to make for a crazy burst damage rotation, because at the same time we have Ring of Fire ticking, we have Orb ticking, we have Comet ticking, we have Ray ticking, and then you shatter all of that with Pet Nova and Winter's Chill, and then boom, the Frost Bomb will expire in there as well and hit for a very, very large amount of damage. Now from here, what we want to do is we want to get our Blizzard down, because that's going to start to reset our cooldown on Orb. And we can actually fit quite a bit of these instant Blizzard resets into our rotation. That's something you want to weave along with your instant casts. So now after we put our Blizzard down, after our giant burst, we go into our sustain part of our damage. So that's going to look like Ice Lance spamming when you have them. And it's really good at the end of this rotation to try to fit these lances into this Winter's Chill debuff here, because that will enable a further modifier called Wintertide, where Fingers of Frost empowered lances deal 20% increased damage to frozen targets. So since we have this Winter's Chill debuff, none of it was consumed because Ray doesn't consume it, Frostbomb doesn't consume it, Winter's Comet Storm doesn't consume it, Orb doesn't consume it, Blizzard doesn't consume it, only direct spells. So now we can actually still throw in our lances and get further value from this Winter's Chill debuff by lancing into it. That's going to cause our lances to do a lot more damage. Now from here we generate 2 more procs. We have a Blizzard coming up as well, so I'll send in my procs. Now I'll go ahead and cast Glacial Spike, and I can actually shatter that with Ice Nova, which is going to further give us Sub-Zero value. And then now you can see my Blizzard is about to end. Throw down the Blizzard, and that's going to get us further Orb reset here. You can see you're trying to drop the Blizzard on as many targets as possible due to Ice Collar. Each time Blizzard deals damage, the cooldown of Frozen Orb is reduced by 0.5 seconds. The more targets you have this on, the further it gets reduced. Now at this point, since I've just used everything I have no more cooldowns really. I don't have my Frostbomb, don't have Comet, don't have any ways to build Icicles to generate another Glacial Spike. I don't have Veins, I don't have Ray, I have nothing, right? So I'll go ahead and use Shifting Power now at this point. So now immediately we could start going into our second Frostbomb go. So I apply the Frostbomb, I flurry right away after that. Now you have some time to kill between your Frostbomb expiring, so you have to kind of fill the gap, but while also not consuming all of your Winter's Chill stacks, because you need this debuff to be on the target whenever this Frostbomb expires fully. So you can see I do throw 1 lance, but I keep that last debuff on there, so I decide to Ring of Fire as well, because I want to get the dot on the target before I start using my Comet Storm. So then boom, I Comet into the remaining portion of my Winter's Chill. I actually go ahead and I say, you know what, screw the Winter's Chill, let me get an Ice Nova on the target. And what that's going to do is going to give you Sub-Zero value. So you can see now all the Comet ticks will benefit from that, and the Frostbomb expiring will benefit from that. Now from here, I'm just throwing my Lance procs as I get them. Since I don't have any right now, I just opt to send a Flurry, and then I'll go in for the Glacial Spike. You could do this in a different way as well. Like right here, you could, or actually no. So the reason I have to send this Flurry here is because I don't have 4 Icicles. So I send the Flurry, which gives me my 5th Icicle, and then that procs my Glacial Spike. And now I can Glacial Spike into the Winter's Chill. That will make it crit. I throw a Lance in there as well. Spells into Glacial Root also get value from Sub-Zero. So I'm going to Blizzard while they're rooted right quick. And then I'm just going to cast Frostbolt Flurry, because that's going to be a min-max way to build up a little bit more sustained damage. It'll generate that extra Icicle. This will generate an Icicle, and then your 2 Lances into that will generate an Icicle. So that's a good way to get a lot of Icicles really quick, especially after you Glacial. You'll see we just Glacialed. We're at 1. We have no quick way to get to our next Glacial Spike, so I fit in a Frostbolt with a Flurry. I drop an Orb because I want to kind of, you know, dot the target and get that on cooldown. I'm throwing in my spikes, or my lances, so I can get to my next Glacial. Now I go ahead and I Glacial because I want to use my Pet Nova. Because it's about to run out. Whenever your Veins runs out, your pet goes away. So I want to get value out of that Pet Nova, so I use it for Sub-Zero. Boom, big Glacials. Get my Blizzard down, go back to Lance spamming. My Frostbomb is off cooldown, so I'll go ahead and throw that in there. Now keep in mind I don't have any flurry procs right now, so I need to find a way to shatter this. So I actually opt to use 2 more Lance Globals, get the Blizzard down because I have a little bit of extra time before it expires, and then I can go into my Glacial Spike and then shatter both of these with Ice Nova. So it's a huge Glacial Spike with a huge Frostbomb ticking as well, and then I just continue to throw in my Lance procs. And that is probably one of the best rotations you could get on a Frost Mage.